Hi, I'm Carl Stabe of Domino Connection. Today I have Dustin Wells with me today of Headspring, and I am so excited because he's a master of conversion. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
So, tell us a little bit about how you got started and your background.
So I started my company, first company in '99, and then Headspring started in 2001. And the first company was a tech company focused on internet cameras and childcare centers.
Mm-hmm.
And we found that model was flawed because parents didn't want to pay for that, and neither did the schools. And so that failed pretty fast in about 18 months or so, and then I spun it off as an IT kind of tech consulting firm. And over the years, we've gradually focused on bigger projects and on client engagements, specifically related to more kind of mid-market and enterprise clients.
Okay. So, most of my audience knows I'm big into conversion. So, why do companies struggle with conversion, and how do you help them?
Yeah, so conversion from a legacy system is really challenging because typically there's been a lot of technical debt accumulated over the years. A lot of these systems have been in place for 10, 15 plus years, and a lot of times it's outdated technology as well. And so in order to update those systems, the traditional approach in the past has been kind of a light switch mentality, right? So I'll build the new one next to the old one, and then one day all the users will just switch over to the new one and everything's going to work great.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we know by now that that just doesn't work, right? And so what we've really come across is a great way to build systems side by side, but create kind of a common backbone where we can share that data so we can slowly convert sets of users, typically grouped by departments or functionality, over to the new system while still having old users in the old system. And so it's really kind of like changing the tires on the bus while it's moving, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a way to create that conversion event and spread it out over time so it minimizes risk. And it also gets working software in the hands of clients more quickly.
Cool. So, I always like to talk about what a personality type is and how you've been able to build off those strengths. So tell us a little bit about, are you an extrovert, introvert, and how's that helped you?
So for me, would be classified as an introvert. So, and the way I kind of categorize that is I'd rather sit around in the evening by myself or with my wife versus go to a party, right? And so, as a CEO though of a software company and interacting with clients a lot and employees, I have to put on my extrovert hat quite often. So I've gotten good at putting that on, but that drains energy, right? Whereas being an introvert kind of gives me energy. So I think that's a good way.
How do you put that hat on? Is there like a mindset that you're like, okay, today I'm going to go up to everybody and say hi?
No, I think it's more, maybe it's the power of habit or something else like that. But when I'm in the office or I'm in front of a client, that's just always there, right? So that's my mentality at work. And then with good friends, it's how I kind of rejuvenate, or just being at home with the kids or the family or my wife. And so that's where I get to put on my other hat. But yeah, I go to my son's football game, for example, and I have my headphones and my hat on and sunglasses so no one talks to me. So that should tell you something.
You could just focus on the... That's funny.
Exactly.
So it's, you create systems around being able to do what you do. So, how do you improve those systems so you get better results for you and your clients?
So specifically with projects, there's something that everyone does now called Agile, right, that everyone's familiar with. And however people define that, what that really means to us is it's about iterative development, and it's about getting working software in front of clients as fast as possible. And so how do we come up with, what's now called the minimum viable product, right, or MVP? I mean, all these terms are now coming out, but this is what we've been doing for 10 years, right? And so how do we get that minimum viable product for a client and that's useful for them so they can start to get return on their investment immediately? And so what are the practices that kind of go into that? Well, it's about learning how to really understand the goals and how to lead the client to the right solution, how to say no and help them understand that it's not because you're not going to get to it, but you're just not going to do it now. So it's really about communications, expectation management, and then about discipline of just executing to that plan.
And how do you stay disciplined? How do you make sure that you're taking those steps?
Yeah, so I think this discipline applies in projects, but it also applies a lot in how we run the business. and then to me personally, as far as goal setting and achievement in general, for me to stay disciplined, I have to have a core set of rhythms, is what I call them, or accountabilities. So like every Monday morning at 8 is when I go over and set my goals for the week, right? And I write down, I look at the annual goals, I look at what I have to get done for this week, this quarter, and I say, what am I going to get done this week? And I write it down. And every day I look at that. And I think it's for projects too, right? We hear about the daily stand-up with agile projects. And the daily stand-up is a rhythm that helps drive that accountability. Mm-hmm. And so whenever I want to get anything new done or get results for something, we always create a set of rhythms around that. And typically it's a set of people in a meeting, right, with a certain agenda for that meeting that's regular.
I like that. It's kind of like a song. You get the song in your head, you get the rhythm down, and then it comes so much easier the more you practice it.
Yeah, so we launched a mobile practice, for example, last year or this year in January. And in order to make sure we got traction on that, I set a weekly meeting with the leads of those practice, right? So we can make sure that we're moving it forward. So I need that accountability, or as an entrepreneur, I'm going to get distracted, right, with other things. With people executing on client projects, I think it's the same way. It's much easier to go fight the important and urgent issues than to really focus on the important, non-urgent issues. And that's where we want to be focused, is important, non-urgent.
I see. So it doesn't feel like stressful.
Yeah, I think it reduces the stress. I think that knowing that let's say a weekly meeting is coming up with a client for a weekly demo, which we do a lot of, we can save up certain roadblocks or other issues, right, for that meeting, and we can address any issues that pop up within a week period versus a quarterly or a monthly demo, right, where you can have a problem that goes 4 weeks plus, right, before it's been addressed with the client. Yeah. So I think that helps with the transparency to the client about what's going on, and it helps address the issues really quickly.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's take a step back then, and all these employees that have to get used to this rhythm, how do you make sure that, I mean, you're growing fast, you're adding employees left and right. How do you keep that culture happy and keep that communication open and fun?
Yeah, so there's a core set of kind of fundamental things that we do as a culture, but that's a really big challenge. And especially this year, right, we have more new people than we had existing staff, right? So we've more than doubled our staff in less than a year. We still have 2 months left in the year. Mm-hmm. And, culture is really important as part of that foundation that helps. And so the way that part of how we drive the integration and kind of onboarding of those new people are through these rhythms, right? And so every Friday we have a company meeting where we share all the financials, we share the recruiting update, we share a sales update, we share updates on major departments, and then we share client updates or successes. Mm-hmm. So that gives us a chance to all sit down and talk as a group every week, and we do that in each of our local offices. Every quarter we have an offsite where we all get together as a company from all the offices, and we have our meeting, and then we go have fun together. Every week I have one-on-ones with all of my people that report directly to me. And so we do frequent one-on-ones, right? So how do we create these rhythms for communication? And over time, those rhythms help drive the expectations for new employees or for client projects or whatever it might be.
Now, do you go out and it's kind of like relaxed, easygoing, or is there an agenda at these meetings? Like, can you drink beer and eat ribs, or is it more like, let's get this stuff done?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we had our quarterly meeting most recently, right? We brought in our Houston office, for example, and they came in to join us. And we went to a place called Top Golf, and that's a golfing place that's kind of created a gamified golfing system, which is kind of cool. Mm-hmm. And we absolutely had an agenda for the first hour and a half, and we covered a lot of ground through that agenda. After that, everyone had drinks, everyone ate, everyone played golf, and it was all on the company's dime. Cool. And so it's important to have fun together and to celebrate success. It's important to be accountable to each other as well, though. And so how do we mix all of those together, right, into a cohesive kind of culture? And for us, the way we've done that is really based on the foundation of a common set of values and practices that we all believe. Mm-hmm. And so that way, when we have a strict agenda at an offsite and then we buy everyone beer, right, we're all coming from the same fundamental paradigm versus people not trusting management because they must be doing this because they've got a hidden agenda, right, or they've got something trying to achieve.
Yeah.
So when we onboard new people, right, we found about 3 to 6 months for them to fully kind of buy in to the culture and who we are because they've been jaded at other places.
Mm-hmm.
So they just don't trust management, for example. And so it takes a while to get them into that. But once they're there, we see a really high level of engagement and employee satisfaction from the foundation that we've created there.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I have a side project, Work Happy Now. So a lot of it is just like open communication and culture and all that stuff. So yeah, cool. Okay, so this is my toughest question that I ask, and I ask it to everybody. What's the secret to happiness?
Yeah. So for me, I think there's a lot of ways to answer that, right? Happiness clearly spans beyond business success or business happiness. At least for me, it does. So I think it's about balance. I think it's about getting up every day and doing things that you love. I think it's about creating relationships in your life that are important for you, and going through happy times together, going through hard times together, because they can't all be good. But how do you really get up every day and love what you're doing and like the impact that you're having on the world? I think that's what it is.
So what happens if you don't love it? Like it's just like one of those tasks where you're dreading it. As a CEO, you can probably say, "Hey, Bob or Mary, do this for me," but sometimes you can't, right?
Yeah. Well, and you'll hear a lot, or I've heard a lot of entrepreneurs say, and the most successful people make a habit of doing things that other people don't want to do, right? And so what I just described to you would completely go against that advice. Yet I actually prescribe to that advice because I do things all the time that make me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I think it's fun and interesting because I'm learning, right? And I'm growing. And so if someone's in that situation where they're not happy about something they're doing, we all have to eat our broccoli at sometimes, right? And I do the same thing. There's certain things I like more than others, even as CEO, right, that I can't delegate necessarily. But overall, am I happy with the direction that things are going in life, kind of community and family? Do I have good alignment in all those areas, or is one side of that equation outweighing the others? And for me, it's about that balance.
That kind of pro-con list.
Well, I think it could be a pro-con list, right? There's something that struck me a couple of years ago that I kind of discovered through an HBR article. It was about competing commitments. And so, I wanted to exercise, for example, but I knew if I exercised, then I was taking time away from my family, right? Or I was taking time away from the time I should spend on the business.
Yeah.
So how do I combine those competing commitments into something that's in alignment with each other? Mm-hmm. And so, like taking the kids on a hike is good exercise and it's time with family, right? Or creating events like we've done at Headspring here, where we all did a 5K mud run together. Right. Well, that's combining physical fitness and business and culture. Right. And so I always look for opportunities to align competing commitments so I can maintain that balance. So that way you don't have to have a pros and a cons, right? I don't have to give one thing up for the other.
I like that. Yeah, I never really thought about it in like aligning that way, but that makes a lot of sense because in the end, it's like, okay, there's only so much time in a day. How can I squeeze it all in? You can't, but at least you can put things together.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So there's probably a lot of entrepreneurs. You're in Austin, which is one of the tech capitals of the world. How'd you get started, and then what advice would you give somebody as they try to get started and build a business?
Sure. Well, for me, the resources we have today, especially in Austin, are so much greater than what we had when I got started I guess even 15 years ago now. And so I think it's totally different. Today, if someone wanted to get started, Austin's a great town because everyone's one phone call away. The networks are really tiny once you spend about a year on those. And Austin's the kind of town where, if someone's willing to call me and pick up the phone, then I'll spend some time with them to help them out and help them get to whatever their next step is. Mm-hmm. So it's a great town for finding mentors and alignment with entrepreneurs. There's also a lot of great incubators in town. I'm involved with one called Capital Factory. That's great. And that's a great tech program, right? That's gotten a lot of great publicity over the last couple of years. There's Accelerator, which is a part of Entrepreneurs Organization. So those are companies that are between 250 and a million. The goal is to help them get to their first million. And so there's so many support systems now that we didn't have back then when I was getting started. And so when I did get started, though, it was really just me being confident and ignorant about how hard it was supposed to be, right? And so Mark Twain, I think, said, "All you need is ignorance and confidence, and success is sure." So that was the perfect quote for me because that described me really well. And so my first business failed from '99 to 2001, and that's when I realized I needed help and I didn't have all the skills I needed. And the one resource that we did have back then that's still around today was called SCORE, Service Corps of Retired Executives. So I went into SCORE in April of 2001, met a mentor, ended up meeting with him for every week for about 2 or 3 years, and still talked to him on and off for the next couple years after that. He passed away a couple years ago. But he helped me tremendously in just the core fundamentals of business. And as a first-time entrepreneur in my early 20s, I don't care if it's tech or bowling alleys, which my mentor happened to be in that type of business in the past. I learned a ton from this guy that is fundamental to any enterprise. And so I think, how do you go seek help and be modest enough to seek help and go get it as fast as possible?
That's a good point. And yeah, Austin's really great. And, but even in a small town, there's a lot of people that would help and be willing to be your mentor.
Yeah. And mentors that want equity are a red flag, right? And so don't do that because there's plenty of people that want to help you just for the sake of helping you, for giving back, or because, I got help, so I want to help other people now.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what makes America great, and probably, a lot of other countries too. People, they've had success and they want to be able to give back, and it's kind of that giving culture that helps everybody else. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, do you have a mentorship program in your company?
So we do actually. We rolled it out in the last 6 months, and so in services and consulting services, it's challenging to have a manager in the traditional sense of the word, because really you're on several different projects at any time during the year. So it's hard to have a manager that manages you, right, when you have different project leads that lead those projects. And so what ends up happening in our mentorship program is that we have mentors that are assigned to individuals, and they are assigned for a 6-month period. And those mentors are other employees or peers, right, that happen to be in a different spot than that current employee is, where they want to go.
Yeah.
And so mentors are assigned based on the goals and career paths of those employees. And those mentors have mentors as well, right? And so that allows us to keep a flat organization from a direct report standpoint, and still get people the career path that they need.
Ah, I like that. That's smart. I like it.
We'll see how it goes. It's only been going
6 months.
Ask me later.
You're like, oh, epic failure.
We'll do a follow-up in a year or two.
That sounds good. Thank you so much. This has been great.
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks a lot for having me.
Sure.